Let me offer you a deal. In front of you is a machine. Climb inside, and it will give you the best life you can imagine. Not a fantasy you know is fake, the real, felt experience of anything you want. Falling in love. And it feels exactly like love. Writing the great novel, holding your child, being at peace. Every high you have ever chased, delivered forever. No grief, no loss, no pain ever again. One condition: once you climb in, you never climb out. Your body floats in a tank while electrodes feed your brain a perfect, seamless life. You will not know it is the machine. From the inside, it is simply the best existence anyone has ever had. So, do you plug in? Sit with it honestly, because a philosopher named Robert Nozick offered exactly this deal in 1974, and something surprising happened. Most people say no. They can't always explain why. But faced with endless pleasure and zero suffering, something in them plants its feet and refuses. And that refusal might be the most revealing thing about what a human life is for. Think about what the refusal means. If pleasure were all that mattered, the machine would be an obvious yes. More pleasure than the real world could ever offer. But Nozick saw what the no was protecting. We want to actually do things, not just have the experience of doing them. We want to be a certain kind of person, not just feel like one. We want contact with reality, not a beautiful painting of it fed into our skull. The man in the tank feels like he wrote the novel. He did. He feels loved. There is no one there. We want our lives to be true before we want them to be pleasant. That is a very strange thing to want. The suspicion is much older than Nozick. In 1863, John Stuart Mill was wrestling with a cruder version of the problem. His own school, utilitarianism, said the goal of life was to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. But if that were the whole story, the happiest possible life would belong to a contented pig. Full trough, nothing to trouble it. And nobody believes a satisfied pig is living better than a struggling human being. So Mill drew a line that has never been erased. Higher pleasures and lower pleasures differ in kind, not just amount. Then he wrote the sentence that gives the game away. It is better to be a human being dissatisfied than a pig satisfied. Better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. He is choosing the pain because the capacity to suffer and the capacity to reach for something higher turn out to be the same capacity. The animal that cannot be disappointed cannot aspire. Take away the ache, and you take away the reaching it was measuring. A novelist saw where this leads and built a nightmare out of it. In 1932, Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, and it is not the usual dystopia. No jackboot, no torture, nothing to resist. A horror made entirely of comfort. In Huxley's future, humanity has won. Disease, poverty, loneliness, war, grief, engineered out of existence. Any shadow of unease is erased by a drug called soma, a perfect holiday from every bad feeling. Everyone is happy all the time by design. And look at the price. No great art because art comes from pain and longing, and they abolished both. No deep love because love means the risk of loss, and they made everyone too shallow for loss to cut. No striving, no heroism, nothing that needs an obstacle to exist. They traded everything that makes a life deep for the guarantee it would never hurt. And they took the deal. At the center of the book stands one man who refuses. They call him the savage, raised outside the perfect world on Shakespeare and real grief. He is brought before one of the world's controllers, who calmly explains that everything he misses, God, poetry, real feeling, was the price of stability. The savage's answer is one of the great refusals in literature. He says he does not want comfort. He wants poetry, He wants real danger. He wants freedom and goodness and sin. What you're claiming, says the controller, is the right to be unhappy, the right to grow old and ugly, to live in constant dread of tomorrow, to be tortured by every kind of pain. There is a long silence, and the savage says quietly, I claim them all. He would rather have the whole catastrophe of a real human life than a perfect happiness that costs him his humanity. And the unsettling thing, the thing Huxley wants to lodge in you, you are not sure he's wrong. Now, carefully, because this idea has a dangerous edge. None of this means suffering is good. It is not. A vast amount of suffering is pure destruction. It ennobles no one, teaches nothing, and should be fought with everything we have. Anyone who says your suffering is secretly a gift is usually selling something. The point is more precise, and it comes from a man who earned the right to make it. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who survived Auschwitz. He lost almost everyone he loved to the camps. He was inside the worst suffering his century produced, watching who endured it. What he wrote in 1946 was this: the prisoners who held on were not the strongest. They were the ones who had a meaning, some person, some task, some future that the suffering was for. Suffering, Frankl said, ceases in some way to be suffering the moment it finds a meaning. Not that the pain stops hurting, but it stops being pointless, and a pain with a point is a different thing than a pain without one. If there is meaning in life at all, he wrote, there must be meaning in suffering, because suffering is a part of life you cannot remove. You only get to choose whether yours will mean something. Nietzsche arrives at the same place from a darker angle. There is a line everyone hangs on him. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. Honest note, he never wrote that. What he did write in 1887 is stranger and truer. Man. The bravest animal and the one most used to suffering does not reject suffering as such. He seeks it out, provided he is shown a meaning for it. What we cannot bear is not pain. It is pointless pain. His most famous line belongs here too. What does not kill me makes me stronger. 1888, printed on 1,000,000 gym walls. He meant that resistance is where strength gets made, the way a muscle only grows against a weight. A life with no weight is not a life of strength. It is a life that was never asked to become anything. Now go back to the machine, and you can see what the refusal was really about. When you climb into the tank, you are not just giving up reality. You are giving up resistance. Nothing is at stake because nothing can be lost. Every achievement is handed to you already won. Not an achievement, just the feeling of one piped in. You cannot grow because growth is the response to friction and there is no friction. You cannot become anyone because becoming requires a world that resists you, tells you no, breaks your heart. The machine offers every experience of a life and quietly deletes the only thing that made it mean anything. That it was real, that it was yours, that you were the one who lived it. Because the same nerve that feels the pain is the one that feels the meaning. Soma does not just take away the grief, it takes away the love that made the grief possible. Anesthesia is not selective. Deaden your capacity to be heard, and you deaden by the same amount your capacity to be moved. None of this is an argument to go seeking pain. You won't need to. Life delivers it to your door. Grief is coming for everyone you love. Failure is coming. Loss is coming. The only question is what you will do with the suffering already on its way. Run from it, numb it, sand away the meaning along with the pain, or let it do the one thing it can do. Make the good moments matter. Give the love its weight. And here is the last turn, the one that makes it bearable. The reason a painless life is not worth wanting is the same reason your painful one is. It is real. The grief is the size of the love. The fear is the size of how much you have to lose, which is the size of how much you have. Every ache is the exact measure of something that mattered. A life with nothing to grieve is a life where nothing counted. So you already know the answer. You would not plug in. You would keep the real world, with all its guaranteed heartbreak over a perfect happiness that was never yours. Which means you have already decided. A life that can be hurt is worth more than a life that can't be. Truth is worth more than comfort. The ache is part of the deal, and you'll take the deal. Now the only thing left is to live like you meant it. Stop treating the difficulty of your life as a bug and see it as the weight a real life is supposed to have. The friction, the resistance, the parts that refuse to be easy. That is not the obstacle in the way of your life. That is your life. The real one, the only one that was ever actually yours. Don't plug in, you already knew that. Now go live the one you kept.